Nisha?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so Salam has provided us with generator backup at all the three places.
Yeah, great.
So we are on not regular supply, electric supply, we are on generator.
Okay,
Right.
we are safe.
Yes, sir. Video off.
Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll wait for one more minute. We are just waiting for Director General Kulkarni to join. So once Sir joins, then we'll be starting this webinar. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So with this, we start with the webinar. So since we have today students also being part of this webinar, I warmly welcome you all uh, for this webinar. Today's webinar is very special as we'll be exploring a new journey of project-based learning. To dive deep into this, we have team of esteemed panelists from Mayo College who will be helping us to understand the know-how of project-based learning and the further journey what we are going to take. I welcome Lieutenant General Surendra Kulkarni, Secretary Mayo College General Council, Director Mayo College. I thank Sir for his constant support and facilitating this webinar. We are joined by esteemed faculty of Mayo College who will be helping us, who will be steering us through this webinar. So I welcome the team. I'll be introducing them shortly. I also take this opportunity to welcome the team of teachers and students who have volunteered to be part of this project-based learning journey. So I welcome them. I also welcome all the participants to this webinar. We are joined by members, senior functionaries, teachers from collaboration schools and Mayo College General Council schools. So I welcome you all for this webinar. Before we start, and I hand over to Mr. Sanjay Khati, who is going to lead this webinar. I have few announcements to make, few housekeeping announcements. First is this webinar is organized on Zoom webinar mode. So only the panelists will have rights to start the video or mute and unmute themselves. Hence, for all comments, suggestions, if you have, you can please use the comment box. For question and answers, please use Q&A box. And while addressing your comments or giving suggestions, I would request you to respect other viewpoint. So with this, I request Mr. Sanjay Khati and his team to start the webinar. Over to you, Sanjay. First, I would request you to introduce yourself and your team, and then you can start with the webinar. Over to you, Mr. Sanjay Khati.
Thank you, Naveen. Good evening to all of you. As Naveen has just asked me to introduce myself, for the benefit of those who don't know me already, I'm Sanjay Khati. I'm the Director of Cultural Activities at Mayo College. And in a short while from now, I'll be introducing my panelists. But before that, just wanted to let you know that we are going to start on journey, as Naveen has just mentioned, something that's called as PBL, which is project-based learning. And we have aptly titled this, transcending the mundane, because we want to do a lot of things that are pretty different from what we are used to doing in the classes. So we'll call it transcending the mundane. But before that, I think, it's very apt to start with an analogy, a kind of an extrapolation that sometimes work. So for a moment, ladies and gentlemen, imagine yourselves to be your hominid ancestors. Now, you are trying to hunt the woolly mammoth, which is a huge, massive animal. Quite obviously, as everybody can sort of discern for himself or herself, this is a massive problem at hand. So there is a problem, and this problem needs to be solved. And this is no easy problem, no mundane problem. To bring down the woolly mammoth is quite a task in itself. So we want to bring down this woolly mammoth. There is a problem. The problem is that it's quite an adversary. We need to have a little bit of critical thinking, because till the time we don't think critically, we won't be able to kind of bring down this woolly mammoth. Also, this is not possible for an individual to kind of accomplish. So what will happen is we'll need a lot of teamwork, and we'll need a lot of collaboration. So teamwork and collaboration is not possible without the fact that we are able to kind of effectively communicate with one another. So communication is an extremely important thing if we want to bring down the woolly mammoth. Now this group of hominid ancestors are able to kind of bring down this woolly mammoth. But what is interesting is in the evening, they're sitting around the campfire and talking about the adventures of the day. The hunt, the kill of the day. It is quite a high point in the course of the day for them. quite an accomplishment for all of them. And they are talking fondly of how exciting would that be? How interesting would that be? How incredible would that be? And how pleasurable would that be? Almost as pleasurable for our hominid ancestors as the cave paintings. So I'll just, start with this analogy because I want to extrapolate, this analogy into what transpires and transacts within the classroom. So PBL starts with an authentic problem that is a real world problem, a problem that sometimes might be a little convoluted. It'll not be straightforward. It'll be complex. Sometimes for the advanced, proponents of PBL, it might be an existential problem. So we start solving this problem. And in the process, we hope that our children will learn from it. So there are two essential ingredients that will drive this PBL. One is the sense of inquiry, the questions, and the other is investigation. So these are two essential elements. If we kind of incorporate this, infuse the class with these two essential elements, I think a lot of chemistry would happen. And we are going to explore this chemistry this evening. Life is ingenuous. It is probably, one of our biggest projects ever. What we want to do is we want to recreate and replicate life at a very microcosmic level inside the classroom. The present classrooms that you and I know of is pretty boring. Sometimes it gets a little staid, a little monotonous, a kind of a drudgery. We need to kind of revitalize it. We need to kind of energize it. And I think we are talking about PBL today because we want to do precisely that. So at a very microcosmic level, we want to bring life into the classroom. These are pretty difficult times for all of us, pretty Kafkaesque and dystopian and Orwellian times for us, almost a leaf out of science fiction. The only problem is that's not fiction, it's a reality. So for a moment, come to think of it, fighting COVID together, the entire world has kind of come together and we're all trying to fight this pandemic. Is this not a project? I'd say I'll go on to the extent of saying that's a project almost, I think the biggest project after the World War II. And we are collaboratively kind of trying to sort of, alleviate the stress and the misery that the world is facing during the pandemic. Also, we cannot let this crisis go waste. And therefore, it is there that, a little bit of educational clairvoyance would come into picture. And it gives us a kind of a retreat, a kind of a recess, a kind of an interstice of time where we can reflect and, imagine, the things that we can possibly kind of do with our children, with our learning, with the various, teaching, learning transactions that take place in the class. So, and that is what, the NEP 2020 talks about. But before I come to the, introducing the panelists, I think I must talk about certain projects that change the course of human history forever. I think one of the biggest projects that mankind has ever taken is the Human Genome Project, mapping the genome, the deoxyribose nucleic acid, and adenine, guanine, thymine, cytosine. It's quite a task. It took the world 15 years to map the genome, 15 years, and a whopping budget of almost $3 billion US. And that is what the world is capable of doing. And what did the world finally achieve? I mean, it's got implications. The Human Genome Project has got implications. If you talk of eugenics, you talk of forensics, you talk of, of genetics, you talk of heredity, you talk of mutations, you talk of all kinds of cancers, you talk of geriatrics. I mean, it's got, a bearing in all these fields. And that is something that we call as the final product. That is something that we call as the aftermath of this entire experience. Manhattan Project, first nuclear weapon. 3 countries came in together with a whopping budget of whopping budget of almost $2 billion, but almost 130,000 people came in together. And these 3 countries, the UK, US, and Canada, all of them were, sort of collaborating with one another to create the first nuclear weapon. Project Apollo, of course, all of you are aware of it. A small step by man, a huge, massive, giant leap for mankind. Project Mercury, propelling the first American into space. So I'm talking about projects. And soon, in a little while from now, we'll be talking about project-based learning. What is the learning that we can possibly kind of glean from these projects, and whether we can recreate these projects within the confines of the classroom, or sometimes maybe beyond as well. Etymology of the word project. This word project comes from the Latin projectum, which is a noun. If you make a verb out of it, it becomes procere. Pro is to set a precedence, and icere is to do. So project technically meant the amount of work that you actually sort of put in before you sort of embarked on a project. But with the passage of time and with the evolution of the meaning of the word, it's come to mean not only the work that you put in before you conceive of a project, but also during it. And of course, I mean, you are mindful of the implications of it might have on the various stakeholders and the society at large, the aftermath, or the final product, as we call it. Okay, so just to give you kind of a brief, purview of what project is, it gives me great pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls who might be there, to introduce my panelists to you. It's quite a privilege to introduce them to you. First up, we have Anjali Pankaj Narayan. Anjali, if you could turn on your mic and your camera and say hi to all the attendees today. Yeah, Anjali happens to be a senior teacher of economics at Mayo College.
Good evening, Sir Sanjay, and a very good evening to all of you. I'm really looking forward to this fruitful and interactive session today on this much interesting topic, to which Sir has given a beautiful introduction. That's project-based learning. Thank you for having us here.
Thank you, Anjali. Up next, we have Nisha. Nisha teaches accountancy in the senior school at Mayo College. Nisha.
Good evening, everyone. I'm really excited to share our experiences with you all.
Thank you, Nisha. Last but far from least, in fact, the most interesting would be Mr. Yash Saxena. What do I say about you, Yash? I mean, he happens to be the most widely traveled man on the campus. And I hope, he has gleaned a lot of experiences, positive experiences that we can possibly sort of infuse in the classroom. He's the round square representative of the school. He happens to head one of the biggest boarding houses at Mayo College, the Oman House. And incidentally, Yash also teaches geography. But I think, what we'll try to sort of, grill you today is on what you do, how do you translate project-based learning into the ground reality, So that's very, very interesting, Yash.
Thank you. Thank you, Sanjay, for that flamboyant introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Looking forward to interacting with you on this wonderful project at hand, PBL.
Well said, Yash. Yeah, thank you so much, Yash. So we'll start with Anjali. Anjali, you have to handhold us and take us along from the moment when you conceive a project and the way the path that you traverse, and of course its fruition. So that is an important, quite a task that you have. But also, Anjali, I think there are 4 Ps. When I was doing a little bit of research on project-based learning, I came across these 4 Ps. So plan, process, people, and products. I mean, these are the 4 essential, indispensable elements to any project. So Anjali, I think, our attendees would be eager to know as to what are these 4 Ps. Also, Anjali, if you noticed, I was talking a lot about projects in the beginning, in the introduction. So is there a kind of a discernible difference between a project and what we call as project-based learning? Anjali.
Thank you, Sir Sanjay. And if you could just tell me, sir, if my screen is visible.
Absolutely, Anjali. Yeah, please go ahead. Yes.
All right. I think I'll start with what is project-based learning, since Sir gave some excellent examples in the beginning of projects. And a lot which we realized during that time was that when we talked of various projects, there was a learning which was happening all along. So when we talk of project-based learning, it is a learner-centered approach to instruction or to the teaching learning process, where the child is learning or the learner is learning hands-on. So it's basically a learning which happens while doing. And the best part is that the child has a voice here. The students have a matter of choice and voice. That means they contribute to how they want to learn it, what is the process that they want to follow, and it's an in-depth inquiry skill that they develop all along. So it's actively it engages the student actively, and the best is that it is something to do which has real life relevance. Before we go any ahead, I think a question which would cross many of our minds would be that what is the difference between projects that we've been hearing all along and this project-based learning? So a project normally, as we've seen it as students, and even now we have our students.
Anjali, sorry to interrupt you. Your screen is not visible. We can't see your presentation.
Okay, just a minute. Is it visible now, Nisha? Nisha,
now
is it visible now?
Yes, it's visible. Is it on full screen?
I'll just put it on full screen.
Yes, now
thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. So as I was mentioning that we've all been doing projects as students, and we've been hearing, and even we have our students doing projects now. So what is the difference? Like Sir Sanjay also asked, what is the difference between projects and project-based learning? Essentially, if we take a look at what we've been doing for the past so many years, is we teach a concept and then we tell the student to make a project to check whether his understanding has been there on the particular concept which was taught or not. The difference in project-based learning is we initiate the inquiry process based on a quintessential driving question, and the students create the project, and the aim of that is to ensure better learning. So that is a main difference which is there. So as you can see here, the project culminates. It's the culmination project, whereas in project-based learning, the learning is happening while the project is being done. The students play a more active role in project-based learning since they are involved in the entire process from the beginning to the end. It's more student-centric. It's not like just the teacher has given a topic, which normally happens in projects, and then they are evaluated on what they've performed there. And they're also actively participating in the assessments as well. So the ownership which a student has is much higher in terms of project-based learning as vis-a-vis the traditional projects that we talk about. Talking of this, now I think it's very important for us to see that how does project-based learning work? Here, a teacher has to do, though it sounds like, we're talking of it being child-centric, student-centric, but it does not go to say that the teacher has no role to play. The teacher has a pivotal role to play, and the back-end job which is done, which is a very, it has to be done in a very systematic manner, that has to be done by the teacher. So the first is to identify the content which has to be taught. It has to be in line with the learning outcomes which are expected at that particular age in that particular subject. So that has to be identified. Since all topics cannot be taught through project-based learning, so you identify a topic which will render itself to project-based learning. And next we come to the driving question. We've talked about, I think this term has been used in the past few minutes. So what is the driving question? This is a question which drives the entire process of inquiry. So it's very important that we align our driving question to what is expected out of it. Like if I were to take an example and we were to tell that, okay, how do you think the RBI's present monetary policy is handling today's market situation or the economic situation? So this is going to decide that how is the student going to be doing an inquiry about it? What all tools is the child going to be studying about in terms of monetary policy? And we need to define the scope of the project, because any project could have a very wide area which could be covered, but keeping it in mind that what is the kind of study we're expecting the child to do and what is in scope at that particular level, that has to be decided, and that comes from the driving question. It is very important. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
yes.
Anjali.
No
a question that comes to mind regarding the driving question, where does it emanate from? Does it emanate from the facilitator or the teacher, or does it emanate from the children within the class? Where does it come from? How do you actually arrive at a kind of a driving question? How do you think of a driving question?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. That's, I think, one important point to be covered. Like, of course, the teacher has decided the content which needs to be covered, but how much and how do we reach that? It's going to come out of a discussion between both the students and the teachers. And in some cases, it could just come from the students themselves, because at times as teachers, we tend to think up to a certain limit, but it could be a totally different perspective which the students bring in.
Yes.
So it comes as a joint effort between both the students and the teachers.
Thank you, Anjali. Yes.
Next, we move to the need to know. I think this addresses a very important part of this entire process, that when a student knows that why is it that I'm studying it, what is the relevance? And the relevance comes when we associate it with a real life problem. Like we said, in project-based learning, we are studying something which has real life relevance. The moment we start studying any topic where we feel it holds an importance in the real world, then I think it adds more meaning to our learning. So the students come up with this and they discuss it with the teacher, and they identify that this entire inquiry process that they're going to do, why is it that they're doing it? So the why becomes clear here. Then they move towards the in-depth inquiry. Since they've been given a driving question, now starts the entire process of studying about it, going into various sources, getting information, working in groups which the teacher has made them, the teacher has assigned them into, discussing whatever their findings are, reviewing them. They're making decisions about it, like the students have a voice and a choice, so they discuss how do they want to go about it. And all along, the teacher is there as a guide to them, also ensuring that she or he is not inhibiting them from trying something new. Because as I said, at times the children bring in a fresh lease of life and a fresh perspective to things. Then there is revision and reflection of whatever has been done. And it teaches the students very important skills like 21st century skills, and they learn to collaborate with each other. They also learn to take up different options if the option that they've come up with is not relevant or not working enough. And last, but most important, is the public product. Here again, it links to the fact, the need to know the why. Now, when they've come up with the solution, they do not just present the product like how earlier it would happen. It would come in the file and just be evaluated by the teacher. Here, the product is made public. And public, when I say, it could be shown maybe to your next class, it could have community relevance, and you could have people coming in from the real walks of life, people to whom it is relevant. Like if they've done a project on banking, you could have somebody come in from the RBI or maybe a banker. If it has got something to do with water conservation, we could have people coming in from the waterworks department, and the presentation is made to them. So the students know that whatever they've done, it's connected to the real world. So this is how the project-based learning culminates into. Now I've shared some project-based learning ideas for grade 9 here. Like if you see here, a driving question, these are examples of some driving questions which could set the child to think about this. And of course, the scope of the project and how much time and how much of detail are we going to get into, that is going to be decided by the teacher and the students in consonance with each other. Now, the most important thing, why is it that we are talking of project-based learning? When we talk of project-based learning today, it is a very future-oriented approach. For anybody who wants to look at future skills, needs to adopt project-based learning. Future-focused educators need to adopt it. And why? Because today, when we are looking at students passing out, we are not just looking at a set of knowledge or information that they have, whereas we are looking at personalities who are capable of adapting to the changes and adapting to the various new jobs which would come up in the future. So what is it that we're looking at? We're looking at equipping them with various skills like collaboration, like decision making, critical thinking, and we are making this whole process enjoyable since they are becoming owners in this whole process. And when the learning becomes enjoyable, we all have better retention and better retrievability, which means that on any time during our lives when we need to take certain decisions, the learning comes back to us fresh because we have been part of the learning process. So all this and the fact that we want lifelong learners and inquisitive learners, that is the reason we are talking so much about this wonderful approach to teaching and learning, that's project-based learning. With this, Sanjay sir, it's back to you.
Thank you, Anjali. Thank you. I think one interesting thing that you kind of raised was student voice and choice. How much does it happen today in the present scenario in the class? I mean, we are trying to make a shift towards that, but I think that will change. I mean, that will be kind of a paradigm, kind of a transactional shift if we are able to kind of reinforce this idea that the student's voice and the student's choice is all that matters. I mean, we are extremely, as teachers, we're extremely kind of peripheral to the entire teaching learning transaction. I mean, it all emanates from the children. So that's very interesting. At this point, I think I'd like to bring in Nisha. Nisha, could you just let us know? I mean, we are talking about project-based learning. How do we actually kind of, what is the requirement that needs to be? What are the requirements that need to be in place to do a project-based learning? Whether it be infrastructure, whether it be in terms of requirements from the teachers, from the administration, from the ministerial staff, I mean, from the management of the school. What exactly are you looking at if you want to run a project-based learning, introduce project-based learning into the classrooms?
Okay, thank you, sir, for asking this question. And let me take the clue from where Anjali ma'am has left, that the project-based learning is one which involves children actively, and we need to teach our children the way they learn best. And when do they learn best? They learn best when they are involved. There is an often heard saying, sir, that tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I'll learn. PBL is exactly that. And in this learning, teacher has pivotal role to play. Nobody can replicate the role of a teacher, no matter how much technology we bringing, how much pedagogical tool we bringing. Teacher does have important role to play. With that, please allow me to take your attention to the jargons used for teacher in PBL. The first one is initiator. As initiator, they sets children into motion, generates curiosity for need to know content, which Anjali ma'am was just speaking about, by launching the project with an entry event, which can be interesting, engaging, and fun-filling. Entry event can be anything, sir. It can be a video, it can be a field trip, or guest speaker, or mock correspondence, or at times just live discussion can also do wonders. It just sets the scenario. And after that, she plays a role of instigator. Why? Because she is a catalyst who sets thought into action, works with them as conspirator, provokes them to think differently, nudges them for a driving question, which Anjali ma'am and you were also talking about. Driving question. Yes, driving question is very important because it captures the heart in the project in a clear and compelling language. And also it gives a sense of purpose and challenge to children. For that, a teacher should ask right type of a question, and that requires skill. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it requires a skill. Here at Mayo College, since so many months we have been working in framing the right type of a question to be asked to our children, so that they can come out with right kind of whys which we are looking for a driving question. So for that, a teacher should ask open-ended, complex, linking, abstract, concrete, any type of question, which will generate why in these children, because this why is the key factor which will develop power or thinking in our children. So let's build that culture of why in our children rather than what, and let's even encourage them to question our questions also. That's why this is a why. And then we have a guide by side. Why? Because in the age of information and technology, the role of a teacher has changed from the controller of information to a navigator, a coach, a mentor who nurtures, who inspires children to think critically, think differently, think out of the box. That's why in PBL, we called a teacher a guide on the side, not sage on the stage. As co-creator, she is not only collaborating with children, they are also collaborating among themselves with different fields, with different departments for broader visions and better understanding. As co-creator, she is also a co-manager, managing the cycle of teaching learning with the help of children with various tools like budget, time management, resource allocation, and many more. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen, wearing different hats of initiator, instigator, guide by side, and co-creator. Now,
Nisha,
after this,
can I just
yes,
quickly come in?
yes,
There are
please.
two things that I need to ask you, Nisha. First is you're just now talking about an entry event.
Right.
Can this entry event be disturbing also? Something that profoundly kind of impacts the mind of the child. Can a project be built around it? I think it can, because
Yes, of course,
anything
of
that
course.
rattles.
Yes, that is very much required, sir. The child should be exposed to various situations, various kinds.
Exactly. Exactly.
So that then
Exactly.
only we'll develop the power of thinking. In whole
Absolutely.
PBL scenario, we are all working on the power of thinking of the child,
That's
not the
right.
ready-made answers.
Or an experience that profoundly
Yes,
kind of,
of course, of
touches the
course.
child, and he's kind of, compelled to do something about it.
Yes,
So
yes.
that is, yeah, a very interesting point that you sort of, raised. The other important, I mean, two interesting words that you, I mean, just coined, I don't know. One is instigator and conspirator. I think, both these words would resonate with our children.
Yes,
So the moment they identify us as one of them, as a
yes.
co-conspirator, as you just mentioned, as an instigator, I think, our job is half done. So I think both very interesting words.
Right,
Yes.
right, sir.
So
Just what you are saying, just want to add to this. We have to be navigators for our children in this age
that's right.
of driverless age, sir.
That's
We
right.
don't have drivers. We have to be navigator, or rather, we can say we have to be co-passengers,
Exactly.
which take the journey of life, sir.
And Nisha, old habits die hard. I mean, we're all trying to do just precisely that, but I don't know whether we have been successful or not.
Right,
But
right.
yes, thank you for, I mean, raising these very, very pertinent questions. Yeah, please carry on, Nisha.
Okay, moving ahead, sir, infrastructure. Having talked so much about hand-on experience and activity, I'm sure that a question does cross our mind that do we require an elaborative setup for PBL? And I just want to highlight one point over here, and that is we don't need to revamp our structure. It just requires a creative way to use it by taking little initiatives, like a studio type of setup which is more collaborative and conducive for learning can be set up, and we can integrate our curriculum with campus and harness it with technology, evidence of which will soon be given by Sir Yash. But let's not get obsessed with technology, because at times in desire to get in tune with the modern technology we lose creativity and endanger the purpose of education. We should always remember that if intentions are correct, ways are automatically formed. Now comes the most important visual, which depicts what we aim in PBL: Trinity in education. Student at the center, teacher, campus, technology coming together to create best learning experience for our children so that they can be blossomed to their fullest potential. As teachers, we should always remember that our purpose is not to create our own image, but to develop students who can create their own image. And that can only happen when the student is at the center with his own thinking abilities. Thank you, and back to you, sir.
Thank you, Nisha. I think this point that you raised towards the end is evidently clear that our role is extremely peripheral. We
Yes,
just need to drive the children. It needs to all emanate and sort of come from the children themselves. So that is a very pertinent point that you made. Thank you, Nisha. At this point, I'd like to bring in Yash. Yash, a couple of things for you. The taste of the pudding lies in its eating. That's one thing. So, what is more important? Is it the dessert that is more important, or is it the vehicle that's more important, or is the journey itself that's more important? Also, PBL is. I've heard it from you. It's contagious. It's creative. It's fun. It sort of engrosses everybody. It sort of occupies and kind of entangles everybody around. It's quite an activity. How do you recreate that activity in life? How do you recreate that activity at Mayo College? Yes.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you. Uh, uh, Wonderful probing question from you, Sanjay. I would like to pick up what my esteemed colleagues, Nisha and Anjali, had just put in beautiful words. Uh, I remember Anjali consolidating on it's the experiences that the students gain during this journey. So, in my opinion, both journey and destination both are important. While Nisha emphasized on leveraging the immediate environment for holistic learning. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to quote somebody who rightly said, all experiences are education, rest all is information. So, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to share with you some glimpse of little baby steps taken at Mayo College, small little projects which resulted into giant leaps. So, Sanjay, if I may
Please,
share my
please, Yash.
screen here.
Please.
Ladies and gentlemen, on your screen is a middle school geography project. Uh, Wonderful endeavor on behalf of the children. The probing question came from them only. Uh, we live in a region which has 55 centimeters of average annual rainfall, almost a semi-arid region. And while we are maintaining this lush green and clean campus, the boys were always intrigued by the fact that how do we maintain our lush green fields and the gardens? So it was very important for them to research and to probe how does this happen. So the photographs which you see on your screen, they show that most of the surface runoff, the drains at Mayo College, they are directed towards a man-made lake which is on campus called as St. John's Saga. And while boys researched on this particular endeavor of Mayo College, at the same time, they learned the importance of water conservation and the viability of learning this, keeping in view the reference of the immediate environment. Next up.
Yash, I wish you could have got us a bigger picture of St. John Sagar.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, we are so proud of the water bodies at Mayo College. I mean, be it in the golf course, and every time you visit the golf course for either a walk or just to be amidst nature, I think you see new water bodies sprouting up. So which is so unique. I think that's unique to us. I think, and we are all so proud of it. So St. John Sagar, this is no exaggeration. This is a beautiful water body, and those people who go to for their evening walks, I think they prefer this location over anything else.
Yes,
So
yes. And also would like to share that not only it is a water reservoir which replenishes the ground level
That's
and
right.
groundwater at Mayo College, but also a home to lots and lots of migratory birds, especially in January.
Absolutely.
Okay, so moving on ahead, what you see on your screen, ladies and gentlemen, is on your left is a very simple project for junior school math. The boys learned and used the squash code steps to learn the concept of ascending and descending numbers. The picture depicts this well. Also on your right, middle school children, under their syllabi of math, they learned to calculate the perimeter of perimeter and area of rectangular blocks, using and taking examples from the marble block of the main building. Small little projects. This is something very interesting. Our senior school students were challenged.
Yash, before you get on with this music, I mean, nothing is happening in the class, Yash.
Pardon?
There's nothing that's happening inside the class. The brick and the mortar, as they say.
That's the beauty of it. Nisha correctly stated, we have to leverage our immediate surroundings, campus as a classroom, experiential learning. And believe me or not, every child looks forward looking outside to those confines, four walls of the classroom, for a better understanding. That is what a child of today needs from us, and
Absolutely.
It becomes our profound duty to take them away from these confines.
Yash, while it becomes so much easier for us, I mean, we are blessed with such a verdant campus, such a huge expanse of green all around. What does a day school do? I mean, how is it possible for a day school to kind of leverage or kind of capitalize the environment around them? Does the society also kind of has a role to play, or the school needs to kind of tie up with organizations outside, or how do we go about it?
Absolutely pitch perfect, Sanjay. You have actually taken the words out of my mouth. What does a typical day school does? Then you have to leverage the stakeholders. I'm not talking about only the parents and the students and the faculty. I'm also talking about the society and the community. There is so much around us. There is so much around us from which we can take lessons from, and we can organize visits, and we can say, for example, we can do industrial visits, or we can do organizational visits. If we are doing a project on crime, I will be showcasing that. You may visit a police station, or you may visit a bank, or you may visit the treasury if it happens to be around you, or you may visit a cotton textile or a tie and dye printing factory which may be around you. There is so much happening around us. Again, Sanjay, it's all about experiences, and this information which they gain through this ownership of the learning, it will remain with them forever. That's what I wish to emphasize upon. May I?
Yeah, please.
Sanjay,
Please.
I was talking to you, ladies and gentlemen, about this wonderful project where our senior school students were challenged, and they were asked to do research on indigenous instruments, musical instruments all over the world, and to craft their own to be played at the annual concert. And what you see in front of you, uh, the students went out of the way in researching about the topic, and at the same time, a core team started getting the gadgets and the resources accumulated at our own technical skills development center. So while both of these teams collaborated with each other, they came up with three beautiful instruments, taking clue especially from the Masais and the Bushmen of the Kalahari. On your left are wonderful splash drums, which are showcasing the five colors of the Mayo College Pacharanga, the flag. On your right top is the tubulum, which is a thongophone. It's also a pipe instrument, and finally a wood block percussion instrument. Now you can all imagine, as my colleague talked about, as Nisha talked about ownership, what ecstatic feeling these boys would have obtained while they played in the annual concert on the instruments crafted by themselves. Another very interesting one. This is a collaborative project which was initiated by Spain as the host country to foster the STEAM skills in the senior school science students. So this is a senior school chemistry project, and very interesting. Again, taking a clue from within the campus, our students, a team of 5 students with a teacher mentor, they studied a forensic science crime scene which was done at Mayo College, and they studied about investigating a stolen painting from the assembly hall. And they did a lot of pre-trips, as I was talking to you about. There's so much around us. They did a pre-trip to the forensic science lab at Jaipur, which happens to be our state capital, and they also visited various labs where they could research more on the chemicals which are used in forensic science. These students were ready with the phenomenal report of their crime scene and the report regarding that, but unfortunately due to COVID and the international flights being turned off, they couldn't visit Spain because they were supposed to present their final report in Madrid in Spain. Uh, Finally, I would just like to consolidate my point with something which is very close to my heart. Uh, Mayo College is a member of a Round Square organization, which is an international organization of more than of elite schools, more than 190 of them from all 5 continents of the world, and it is based on 6 major ideals, as the acronym says: internationalism, democracy, adventure, uh, leadership, and service. uh, so our middle school students, they actually challenged our director in form of a probing question that, sir, why we all could not take part in annual conferences or symposiums organized by the Round Square. Only few of the students get a chance. So this was a question which was thrown to our head of the institution, and he was taken by surprise. But in his own magnanimity, he posed them in return that why don't you organize a conference of your own, and why don't you host a conference of your own, where you can give the experience of a round square conference to your batchmates or to your seniors. And this is how the journey began. So class 7 students were challenged to host a conference for class 8. 100% intra conference, in-house conference, and everything that happens in an international conference happened on campus in a span of 3 days. Later, when we presented the report in the Round Square International at London, the school won accolades, and many other schools started taking a clue from such an intra conference, and they have uh, uh, exemplified this model into their own functioning of Round Square ethos at their schools. So what I want to emphasize here is, out of all many myriad flagship events at Mayo College, this is a flagship event of Round Square organization at Mayo College. And believe me or not, Sanjay, as we were talking about viability, this was not taken as a PBL model, but eventually it resulted into a full-fledged, tested, tried
PBL model, and that's why it is now an annual calendar event at Mayo College. Over
Yes,
to you, Sanjay.
what is interesting is, I mean, how did this activity kind of widen the scope of experience for the children? I think that is something that's worth noticing. So you create an experience for a select group of children. I mean, that's an experience that stays with them. Maybe it's contagious to a certain extent, but then when you create an event or an experience for the entire class, I think it's a different kind of thing. And as you said, I mean, when you started, you had no idea, I mean, what you're doing. I mean, in the sense that, we didn't have the, tenets of PBL written down anywhere, or the assessment anywhere, or the, final outcome or the final product, as you just mentioned, anywhere. But I think, that is what learning is all about. You can't possibly structure learning or instruction. So learning happens this way. And towards the end, maybe, when you get a final product, then you could sort of revisit the entire, experience again, and then glean out as to what you learn from the entire experience. So thank you so much, Yash. At this point, I'd like to bring in Anjali once again. Anjali, problem, as we have been talking about, problem is integral to PBL. Now, a problem, can it be a theoretical problem? That's one thing that I need to ask you. And PBL, of course, is pedagogy. So how does a theoretical problem actually kind of link to a pedagogy? That's one thing that our attendees would like to know. The other thing is, we are often kind of entrapped and ensnared by curriculum and textbooks and this and that, and all kinds of circulars coming and floating all around us. I mean, sometimes we feel kind of fettered by all this, impaired by all this. Do you think curriculum has a kind of a role to play when it comes to PBL? That's one thing. The other thing that kind of sort of plays on the mind is the textbooks. I mean, certain schools have prescribed. We are extremely flexible when it comes to textbooks or when it comes to curriculum. We have a kind of an integrated, amalgamated kind of a, we have designed our own curriculum, but this is for the benefit of other schools. So curriculum, what is the role of curriculum when it comes to PBL? That's one thing. And the other important thing is, what is the role of the textbook when it comes to PBL?
Right, Sanjay sir, thank you. I think you've touched on two things which we as educators, I think, always are worried about the moment we think of a different way to instruction. So I think I'll just share my screen. Is my screen visible? If
yeah, you need to enlarge it a bit.
Yes, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Is it fine
yeah,
now?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, thank you.
Right. So firstly, thank you for that question, because I think we'll be talking about some things which as educators do hold a lot of relevance for us. So first, I'll talk about how do we implement this different pedagogical approach that we have. So it's not that we need to make an entire shift in the entire process has to be changed, or everything right from the textbook and the curriculum have to be changed. It can be blended well into what we have existing right now with us. So how we go about it, firstly, as you can see, it can be implemented right from kindergarten to grade 12. That means there are so many topics across right from kindergarten to grade 12, which render them to project-based learning. Here, the teacher has an important role to play in identifying that what is it that we can teach through project-based learning, and where do we bring in the other pedagogical approaches. Once we do this, there is a shift in thinking, a paradigm shift that teachers and students need to bring in. Firstly, teachers, like I think Nisha mentioned, that we need to let go and let the child take center stage and not be wanting to control everything in the class. The children have, as I mentioned earlier, they need to have a choice and a voice, and they need to get involved into the whole process. And also the teachers, when they are moving towards this direction, so they are being more liberal, they're letting the children come along in this journey. And the students, on the other hand, also have to get into a mindset of doing the inquiry and the research. In our present day traditional system, students are used to the answers being provided by the teachers. So here there will be a shift when they will start working on to finding the answers themselves, and they'll be seeing the problems and the topics that they're covering in relevance to what is happening in real life. So they will be linking what is given in the textbooks and the curriculum to real life situations. So this means they will have to move in ahead on terms of inquiry, and they'll have to widen the scope of getting information and align it to what has been asked as part of the driving question. So they need to develop and hone these skills. And of course, the 21st century skills, they will all come in here and they will all get developed. Yes, a little bit of classroom organization and reorganization has to take place, since we mentioned that we'll be talking about students working in groups, which means they should be having a seating arrangement where they can sit and they can have discussions, they can discuss their ideas and think it through, revisit their ideas. And also, when we're talking about not only being confined to the four walls of a classroom, but they should be able to go out onto the campus and have their discussions there, have relevance of various things which are available on the campus depending on the topic that they're considering. Talking about the role of the textbook. When we're talking of project-based learning, students are garnering information from a whole lot of resources, but it does not mean that the textbook loses its relevance in any which way. A textbook is made based on a lot of research which has gone into what students at that level need to know. And keeping that in mind, I think it acts as a great reference material. Plus, it acts as a great source from the teacher, from where the teacher selects the content. Plus, it acts as a guide in terms of how to define the scope of the project. As I mentioned earlier, there could be topics which have so much of research which could be done. But keeping the fact that in mind that how much at that level is required, so this acts as a great source here. And now talking about curriculum, we are all as teachers worried about how are we going to finish the syllabus. But here we are talking of a bigger term curriculum where we are not only talking about the content of the textbook being covered, but rather we are talking about the various skill sets and activities which we feel at a particular age level should be done. So this is again an example from Mayo College where we are integrating project-based learning with the curriculum. Here in this specific case, a driving question was given to the students as to how do they think, what is global warming, how do you think it is caused, and what is it that we can do at our level to curtail it. And this was integrated right across physics, chemistry, bio, maths, right up to art. And if you could see, it's an enactment that the children are doing here where the student is wearing a colored wig, where they're talking about the impact that it has on the jungles and how's the kind of wildlife that's getting impacted. So yes, it does require a lot of back-end planning at the level of teachers, where they get together and see how it can cross across disciplines. And that way, we not only ensure that the children get the content knowledge, but their skills get developed through presentations, like which could be covered as part of the computer literacy, theater, where they enact whatever the topic they want to talk about. And of course, the academic subjects are taken care of. And here, if you see through art, they did convey their message about global warming as well. So I think if the teachers sit through in the beginning of the session and think it through that how are they going to integrate it, I think it can complete not only the academic syllabus, but take care of a lot of other activities as well. So I hope, Sanjay sir, I've answered some of those questions.
Yeah, Anjali, thank you so much. So I think some of the best things can actually sort of come up from a little bit of creative chaos and anarchy let
Absolutely.
loose, and all kind of disturbance in the class, and some brilliant ideas can actually sort of come up from there. So that's very interesting. Uh, but that brings me, this entire thing would be pretty futile if we don't actually kind of assess, are able to assess our children. So that brings me, at this point, Nisha, I'd like to bring you in, and maybe we could talk about assessment. And we are talking about assessment a lot. I mean, we're talking about rubrics in Mayo College these days quite a lot, at a very aggressive level, at a very vigorous level. We're talking about multi-dimensional assessment, and exit assessment and formative assessment. It should be derivative. It should be a pretty organic kind of thing. It should be very intuitive. Also, to an extent, a laissez-faire kind of an assessment that happens without the teacher actually getting to know anything about it. And the children, of course, they are totally oblivious as to what's happening, but the assessment is taking place. I mean, it should be so integral that we don't even notice it happening. So how does it all actually sort of translate to when we talk about PBL? That's extremely important. Also, how does assessment enable the facilitators or the teachers or the educators to drive PBL? Nisha.
Okay, thank you first of all, sir, for asking about assessment. Let me confess one thing. As teachers, you can ask other attendees also who are all teachers. We are really obsessed with words like assessment, testing, evaluation, examinations. It's always there in our mind because we think that our testing is being done by our assessments, right? So, jokes apart, Coming to your question, assessment in PBL. Assessment in PBL is multidimensional, because here we are not talking about only conceptual knowledge, we are talking about the skill acquired. And the skill, when we talk about skills, we talk about a journey, we talk about a process. That's why it's for learning, not of learning. A big question mark on your screen, and we must be wondering why it is so. This why is the integral part of teaching learning, and this why requires thoughtfulness, requires creativity and patience. An assessment in PBL is weaved in the fabric of why. Coming to objectives of assessment, this is all linked with what Anjali ma'am has already told us, the cycle of learning in PBL. So we are assessing that only, but various tools and various objectives are kept in mind. The first one is research. Here, uh, teacher tries to find out how well the inquiry question has been taken by the child, what kind of surveys he is doing, what kind of case study he has taken, whether it is descriptive, associative, or what kind of search engine he is using for it, and how well he has analyzed each part of the data which he has collected. And when we talk about evaluation, here we are talking about written and oral proficiency, his work ethics, presentation skills, talking about authenticity, which you were also talking about, authenticity and viability. And when we talk about viability, we talk about timelines and milestones. And here also we test the ability of a child to give and take feedbacks. And tools we can use can be SWOT analysis, deeming cycle, or a spiral of continuous evaluation, which is PDCA, that is plan, do, check, act. Then comes reflection. Reflection basically acts as a fuel to accelerate the process of learning. And here we try to answer certain questions like, what do I think about my project after getting feedback? Do I think the same way but more strongly, or what has changed my perspective, are some questions we answer here. And tool test that can be a performance questionnaire, reflection meeting, moment of self realizations, and introspection. And coming to communication and collaboration, these are 21st century skill, which will be taken elaboratively by Sir Yash, but little I will be touching a little bit about it. So when there is a good communication, there is a teamwork. And when there is teamwork, there is a good collaboration. And when there is collaboration, then comes the critical thinking for which this PBL is set up. And when there is a critical thinking, there is the highest level of learning, which is called creativity. So here we are testing what is working well and what is not working well, because when you give choice, a voice and choice to children, at times they get overwhelmed with choices and ideas, and every idea cannot be implemented. So here what we are doing it here, we are checking what is working well, what is not working well, what might work well if little adjustments are made. And the process followed here is evaluation, examining, and monitoring. Continuous monitoring is required. Here we are assessing what is versus what ought to be. Now, how do we achieve objectives? There are various methods and instruments, and thanks to this digital platform, this blessing in disguise, this COVID has given so much opportunity to all of us to explore digital world and come out with a lot of methods. Every second day you find something new in assessment. And but the base is rubrics. So what is rubrics? Rubrics is basically one thing which articulates our expectations. It defines what will be assessed and describe how it will be evaluated. All depends on the nature of the project which we are taking. Then we can have graphic organizers, which includes concept maps, timelines, classification charts, sequencing activities, and many more. We can have written oral photo journals, and which includes what you call checklist for not only for students, for teachers also. And student-led conference are the wonderful ideas which can be implemented, which can be the source of assessment. So for that, we can plan a lot of activities. May I request our audience, if they know about any activity which they have done to showcase the ideas of children, can present, which they have presented to write in the chat box. So here, as time is constrained, so I will be just taking a little bit of some of the activities. One is Picha Kucha. Picha Kucha is basically a short, simple, informal presentation format. It is a Japanese term which means chit chat. So here, child gets only 20 seconds to present his one slide. So for total, he's getting 400 seconds to quickly present his idea. So it's very, very quick, and you can really present well. Then we have one called brain writing. Brain writing is one of the variant of brainstorming, which is in written form, and you can really present your ideas in very short period of time. Then we have jigsaw. It's again one of the group activity to share information. Now coming to how can we do it? Just we have discussed, but here I just want to emphasize that learning objectives, teaching objectives should always be kept in mind while designing any question paper, designing any activity, designing any outdoor or indoor activity, anything. You have to keep in mind your learning objectives. Then who does it? The scope of assessment in PBL is wider than traditional method. Here, not only importance is given to teachers' evaluation, peer assessment, self-assessment, parents' assessment, and as Anjali ma'am was also talking about, assessment done by society at large when they present their product in front of the world. So now coming to when. As learning is a continuous process, so is evaluation, so is your assessment. So it's not only the summative assessment which is important. Formative assessment are equally important, rather more important than summative assessment. Now comes the big question: why not traditional? Why PBL? What is wrong with traditional? We have been taught by traditional method and we are doing pretty well. What is wrong in that? There is nothing wrong in it, but the purpose is entirely different. One talks of learning, other talks about it talks about for learning. It PBL teaches us not only to take success in our stride, but also failures. It makes us lifelong learners who are ready with plan B, C, and at times plan D also if plan A fails. We not only become acceptors, but also anticipators of future because it develops the skill of thinking and visualizing. That's why in PBL, we call a paradigm shift from teaching to learning. Thank you, and back to you, sir.
Thank you, Nisha. What I understand from what you just shared with us is it's pretty supple, it's pretty flexible, it's pretty adaptable, continuous, comprehensive kind of an evaluation. It's non-linear. So that's very
Yes.
important. One thing that you could have possibly, I mean, just a thought that comes to mind is reverse assessment. You give a question to a child, and I was watching this webinar in which
Yes,
Professor
I
Sunathan,
also witnessed
yes,
that. You give a question to a child and
that's
ask
right.
them to
And the
answer,
child,
look for answer.
that's right. The child would say that, this topic hasn't been taught, or he is totally oblivious of what this topic is about. And then he'll do the research. And then you, towards the end, you come and sort of interact with him, have a kind of an interview with him.
Yes,
And that
yes,
is
yes.
when, the entire assessment, this entire paraphernalia of assessment fall in place, and gradually a
That's
kind of a,
why, sir, that's why we call them anticipators. You are
that's right.
anticipating things and then coming out with it,
That's right.
right, sir?
That's right. That's
Okay.
right. That brings me to Yash. Yash, 20 years down the line, it's a kind of a Panglossian estimate. 20 years is a long stretch of time. So let me say, I mean, about 7-10 years, the job market is going to have a kind of an upheaval. It's going to change like never before. And we don't know about 7-10 years down the line, what are the skills the job market is actually looking at, when it comes to recruiting young people. So we got no idea about it. And how can we actually sort of inculcate those skills that we don't even know at this moment that the job market would actually be sort of looking at? That's one thing. And as a person who's done a lot of projects in Mayo College, what are the skills that you like your children to kind of inculcate while at Mayo College, so that they can they can have a kind of a head start, or they can stand in good stead 7, 8, 10 years down the line?
Uh, Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you for those questions in two parts. In fact, I will take them in reverse order. So
Mhm.
first, I'll talk about skilling through PBL, as you correctly asked me. Nisha, you must thank me because what you said, I have put it on graphics. Okay, so let me just share them with
Okay,
you.
sir.
Okay, the much coveted four C's: communication, critical thinking, collaboration, creativity. Okay, there has been so much of talk about it, ladies and gentlemen. Uh, but what we need to understand as fellow educators, because there are so many teachers on this webinar today, and of course accompanied by the students, but what we need to understand the crux of these four C's and how would they help us culminating together what we are seeing our children 20 years or maybe 10 years down the line. So, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about communication, you know, we have to devise new strategies and tactics. The PBL teacher needs a toolbox full of questioning techniques to develop inquiry and curiosity. Now, talking about critical thinking, now teachers across the country, whenever we interact, they tell me that it's a very hard thing to bring into a classroom. But believe me or not, it is one of the game changers. So we must internalize and model critical thinking and bring it into the DNA of the classroom. Talking about collaboration, of course, through collaborative efforts, students learn to collectively plan, work towards a common goal, and recognize and navigate, uh, uh, and also understand and estimate at the same time the individual differences in skills, abilities, and aptitudes. Finally, creativity. At heart of every project-based learning lies the skill of creativity, and it gives us, our teachers as well as students, to innovate, to create new products, to create new learning and new ways of even visualizing the world. The examples are all over. So I would not ponder more upon the four C's, but instead, when the collation of these take place, what happens? So you see, when effective critical thinking, meaningful critical thinking meets with communication analysis takes place. Of course, as Nisha says once again, when communication and collaboration converge with each other, teamwork comes into play. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, when critical thinking and collaboration meet with each other, creativity takes place. And all this interaction then culminates into a final product, which you see right in the center of the graphic. Here, I would like to rather not warn, but I would like to coax, or I would rather like to request my fellow educators, don't be under the shackles of these words which you're seeing on your screen: intradisciplinary, interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, and beyond everything, transdisciplinary. We are not to be confined and bound by these words that which would apply to our project in question, our project-based learning in question. You can work whatever, work on whatever suits you best. Just to give you a one liner for each. What is intradisciplinary? It is working within a single discipline. Interdisciplinary, when you interact with a separate discipline. But what is multidisciplinary? People from various disciplines working together on a common goal, on a common theme. Cross disciplinary, when you view one discipline from the viewpoint or the perspective from another discipline. But most plutonic would be transdisciplinary, which is beyond any discipline, which is a unique model in itself. Now coming on to just wrapping it up, Sanjay, in another 30 seconds or so: ensuring continuum. Now this is where our biggest challenge lies. Whatever we have learned, whatever we have gone through, whatever experiences we have gained in this journey, are they retrievable 20 years down the line? Our students, they will be CEOs of companies, they will be defense personnel, they will be lawyers, doctors, even ministers and bureaucrats. So I'm not talking when they will be responsible just to give
Yash,
answers. Yes,
artists
yes,
and
yes.
painters and musicians and performers.
Of course, of course, of course. I'm sorry. I went on becoming too robotic and visualizing from a single prism. But what I mean to emphasize here is, how do we ensure continuum? And this is a very, very important challenge, as well as it is a pertinent question to all of us educators. And it would be ethical, and it would be nice, and it would be wise to see our students equip themselves to face the challenges of life. And how would we do that? I will just sum it up in 4 points. Number one, what you need to do is, uh, you need to integrate all this learning into your curriculum. Enjoyable learning, yet meaningful. Number two, look at look at aim and target at the 21st century learning skills: empathy, civic literacy, collaboration, communication, digital literacy. All these will come into play, and they are already as such. They are into play. Especially this pandemic has taught us a lot. Third, what I would like to emphasize here is, let these four C's be the core of all the learning process. And finally, retrievability. We need to assure, and we need to guide and stand by the side of our students and tell them, what if they have hit dead ends? What if they have seen something wrong in this journey? They can always revert back. These students have much finer sense of understanding than all of us adults. Heavens aren't falling down if they have hit dead ends. Ultimately, what is more important is, when they will be at the threshold of their lives 20 years down the line, they will be able to take decisions suitable for themselves and for the community. That's what we mean by a fully viable and tested PBL model, so that it pertains and it is beneficial to the community as a whole. That's over to you, Sanjay. That's from my
Oh,
side.
thank you, Yash. You talked of a very important and a very significant word, retrievability, you said. I mean, that's what education is all about, isn't it? I mean, 20 years down the line, what you remember is education. And what you forget and what you kind of obliterates from your mind has never been education in the very first place. So I think you talk a lot of sense. The other important thing that you just mentioned is it's all very, once again, very flexible kind of thing. So you just need to create an environment where things happen, where skills are imbibed and inculcated, and that kind of thing happens. And over a period of time, let's hope, keep our fingers crossed, let's hope for the best, and hope that we are kind of teaching our children the right kind of skills that will help them in good stead 7, 8, 10 years down the line. So it's quite an onerous task, Yash, to kind of sum everything up, but let me just quickly try to do that. One thing, I mean, one evidence that's extremely categorical and that emerges out of it all is that our children have extraordinary, capabilities. They're extremely creative. And I think it'll be quite a sin if we squander this talent. I think we need to sort of, unleash the talent. We need to sort of capitalize on the talent. And that thing wouldn't be possible till the time we do something different. And I think PBL is one of them. So PBL comes into sharper focus here. So that is extremely important. That brings me to Pablo Picasso. He said, all children are born artists. I mean, what happens to them when you grow up? Unfortunately, in the decadent, regressive system that we have got so used to over the years, what's happened is that there are no sunsets after class 8. And how you can't imagine of a bigger tragedy than this. So all children who are born artists, I mean, they forget to draw and paint and sing and, play music as they grow up. What happens to them? So that is one thing that we seriously need to ponder. Also, I think we as teachers, we got a lot on our hands. We as teachers, sometimes get ensnared and sometimes get entrapped in something that's we call as functional fixedness. Most of the problems in this world, in the real world that we're talking about, most of the problems are not linear. They are peripheral. And if we continue to do the same things that we have been doing over the years, quite obviously we'll create the same world that we have right now. If we want to create a different world, if we want to create a kind of a better world, if we want to create a kind of a productive, interdependent kind of a world, if we want to create a kind of a global village, then what we need to do is we need to do things differently. And that is where I think PBL once again comes into sharper focus. So one thing that works to advantages that the children are not afraid to fall. So let them fall, let them clamber, let them totter, let them get up again, and they'll learn to walk, and they'll never ever disappoint you. And I'm so proud of the children who are attending this webinar today, because I'm talking on behalf of all of you. We as teachers we repose enormous trust on you. If there is a problem, it is with us, it is not with you. So on that note, let me talk about like, for example, in languages. How do you learn a language? You learn a language by speaking or listening. Same is true with life. How do you learn to walk? I mean, nobody in this world can ever teach you how to walk. If you want to learn how to walk, you have to walk yourself. I mean, that's the simplest and the most straightforward way of doing it. So yeah. Another thing that sort of kind of plagues the teachers is that we fear that if there's a kind of a shift from the control that we talk about. So teachers, we take great pride in having control over the class, and they are skeptical of the fact that this control would kind of shift towards the students. Let me tell you, all my fellow teachers here, the more the control kind of moves towards the children, you'll find that you have forged bonds of trust with the children. In fact, what will happen is that you will have more control over them. In fact, this bond of trust that we so often, proudly kind of boast of, being prevalent in our college amongst the teachers, between the teachers and the students. So the moment this shift happens, the moment the responsibility kind of shifts to the children, I think you'll develop trust. And with trust as a very powerful tool, you can make things happen. And that is, I think, extremely integral to PBL. Also, as teachers, sometimes it's pretty difficult to actually sort of, deal with children as our hands are kind of, full, so some of the children, sometimes we feel the children are not lovable, they're not likable. Sometimes we've got so much happening on a head, up here, so much happening up here that, we don't kind of spare the time that the children deserve, and they demand this time. I mean, quite obviously, the best thing that we can do for our children is to give them time. So C.S. Lewis comes to mind. He talks about this agape kind of love, this kind of, a decisional kind of love, this kind of self-sacrificial kind of love. And I think that is what we need to inculcate as teachers. Also, so just summing it up, I mean, what we want to make is, we want to make hackers, we want to make rebels, we want to make iterative thinkers, we want to make scientists and discoverers and people who can, who are young children who are wildly and unabashedly different. So we want you to be different. And I think if you are different, if you grow up into different adults who think differently, who think for themselves, I think we would have attained our purpose, of talking about PBL to all of you this evening. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is meant for all, the educators as well as the children. PBL is as old as hills. I mean, we have already been doing it. I mean, for how many ages, we don't know. I mean, there's a fancy term that's come in that's called as project-based learning that puts things into perspective. But I implore you all, request you all fervently, let's start with PBL. Let's start small. Let's start simple. Let's start smart. But let's start PBL. So thank you so much, all of you. And without taking much time, we've already taken a lot of time. Over to you, Naveen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sanjay. So before we move forward for question and answers, I'll just share the timeline and the team so that we know what exactly we have to do and how we have to go about. So as Mr. Sanjay and his team has shared, I have just created a timeline for all the activities what we are going to have for the journey what PBL would require. So making groups had been shared with all of you, and this time the groups are very, very different to what we have been doing. We have a mix of teams. So the first see what Mr. Yash had talked about, collaboration. So that has been incorporated in that. And after that, today, after today's webinar, from tomorrow onwards, I'll be requesting all the teams. I'll be sharing the teams also right now. I'll be requesting the teams to have a virtual meeting. You can meet virtually, and you can brainstorm on the topic what you're going to choose for your project-based learning journey. So 11 to 16 is what we look for this part. And on 70 by 17th, I think you can share the topic with me with the collaboration office. And then from 17 to 12th December, almost a month, what we are giving you is for your PBL journey, where you have to decide the scope of the project, assessment criteria, your timeline for completion of PBL, and then reflection, critique, revision, and all those things. So that will take place from 17th November to 12th of December. We'll be reviewing the PBL uh, presentations on 14th of December, just to see how much you have achieved, whether you have been able to fulfill the requirements of PBL, and if there's a need, we'll let you know. Otherwise, we'll have presentations. Tentatively, 16 December is what we are looking at for having presentations of all the teams. So this is about the timeline. About teams, we have Mayur School Noida. It's been led by mentor teacher Miss Shikha Gupta. I should not say led by, because we're looking for students to lead this journey. So this is a team for Mayur School Noida. And we have Divyam, Helena, Akshata, Sailpreet, Kushag, Kriti. Next we have Mayor World School Jalandhar. This is a team which is where we have Ms. Jasmine Srivastava as mentor teacher. Next we have Mayur Private School Abu Dhabi. It's been led by Ms. Sunita Pinto. And you can see the team has one member from the same school, but other five members, student members, are from five different schools. So it's a real collaboration what we are looking at. This is Mayur Chaupasni School, Jodhpur. Ma'am Tripti Chaudhary is one, will be the mentor teacher. Then from Mayur School, Sri Ganganagar, we have Ms. Japsimran Kaur Marwa and the students. And last, Mayur School Ajmer. It's been led by Ms. Manisha Mulchandani. So ma'am is going to have team of Akshara Gupta, Pulkit, Siddha, Nand Kishore, Kushal, and Amira. So with this, we open the session for question and answer. If you still have queries regarding project-based learning, we have team of teachers from Mayo College who had just shared the know-how of PBL. They'll be helping you. They'll be sharing. You can. I'll be sharing the contact details of all these teachers. You can discuss with them, and you can further take it after the webinar gets over. So over to Mr. Sanjay. If there are any questions, I saw Tanupriya. She had raised her hand. If Sanjay, you can allow Tanupriya to raise her question.
Yeah, please.
So you can allow her to speak. I'll just give her rights.
Yeah, please do. There are 7 of us, Naveen, here. So 4 of us are there from the earlier team, and there are 3 people who have just joined us. So
Yes.
they also, kind of involved in PBL now in a big way. So.
Yeah, Tanupriya, you can raise your question to the team.
Yeah, Tanupriya, we're waiting for you.
Tanupriya, you mute. Now you can speak. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Tanupriya.
So my question is regarding art and literature,
Yes.
and I would like to know how we can have PBL in art and literature so that we
Yes.
can make our students more confident in it.
Yes, Tanupriya, I do a little bit of theater, not to the extent that I'd like to, but I'm a great theater aficionado. So this is something that we had tried, and maybe you could sort of, recreate and replicate that in your school as well. Um, I had to teach iambic pentameter to the children. And without actually letting them know what a pentameter is or what an iamb is, we asked them to do a lot of verse plays. Quite obviously, we had done our paperwork, but that was absolutely unaware. I mean, the children were absolutely unaware of what they were learning. As I just mentioned, learning and instruction cannot be sort of structured, and that is what is so exciting and fun about it all. So they did a lot of verse plays. Now, when they were doing a lot of verse plays, they realized that there was a kind of a tempo to it. There was a kind of a stressed syllable, and a syllable that wasn't stressed to the extent that the earlier syllable was. So they were actually kind of picking up a kind of a tempo, picking up a kind of a rhythm. And when they realized that this is not music, this is verse, or maybe sometimes this is just plain simple prose. But when they were saying those lines, there was a kind of a tempo and a rhythm that they were kind of achieving. So by the end of it all, by the production, when the production, got over, most of the children were kind of familiar with, what iambic pentameter is. So that is one thing that we did try when it came to theater. I don't know whether you can do the same thing. I'm sure you can do the same thing with music. I'm sure you can do the same thing you can give such exciting, adventurous ideas to the children who love painting. I mean, painting is not only about the color that you splash on the canvas. It is not. I think it is about the idea. So poetry is not about words, it's about the idea. So, you can sort of throw certain important questions. And instead of, let's say, for example, writing a composition or writing a poetry, I mean, if your child wants to paint, let's say, for instance, his painting would be worth 1,000 words. I think you just need to excite that interest. You just need to give that interesting question, something that probes, something that hurts, something that penetrates deep within. And I think the best would come out from the children. You can do it in groups, you can do it in independently, you can do anything. As we have just mentioned, flexibility and the fact that it is extremely supple is something that gives us such an enormous license. So PBL means a lot of license. You can do things your way. Tanupriya, have I answered your question? Anybody
Thank you
else
so
would
much,
like to?
sir. Thank
Yeah,
you
yeah,
so much, sir.
yeah.
Yeah, Sanjay,
Tanupriya?
there are a few questions in the chat
Yes.
box. I can see
Yeah.
About topic. We had been discussing about topic that we'll not give topic from our side, but we would want the teams to actually do a lot of brainstorming, and that is the timeline what I had given initially. From 11 to 16 is what we want them to be meeting virtually. They can use any platform to meet. That's irrelevant. It's just that they have to connect with each other. So we'll have a team where we'll have students from Abu Dhabi, or they'll be from my school, Noida, or maybe Jalandhar, Ganganagar, Ajmer, Jodhpur. So the mentor teacher has to get them together. We want this exercise to be student led exercise. They need to be exploring, they need to be experiencing the PBL, the journey. The mentor teacher, like ma'am Nisha and Miss Anjali had shared in their presentation, has to be initiator, somebody who's guide on the side, not sage on the stage. So all those aspects need to be taken into account. Instigator. So all these things
Conspirator,
need to
sir.
be
Conspirator.
conspirator. Yeah, yes. So
Naveen,
and
I think.
also the teacher has to facilitate the meeting, like getting everybody together, brainstorming, and then exploring all those things. The teacher has to get
Yeah, Naveen, I
to the
think
students.
there are a lot of questions, pertaining to the fact that how will they establish contact?
So for
You
that,
know,
what I'll do is I'll be sharing the details of all of you and the three more teachers who are there part of today's webinar from Mayo College. I'll share the contact details with all the principals and all the team members. I also have their mail IDs and phone numbers. So I'll be sharing your details with them.
Perfect.
So I think, Sanjay, it's we have overshoot, and because of
yes,
paucity
we
of
have.
time,
Yeah,
I
my
think we need
apologies. Yeah,
to.
on
Yeah, yeah.
behalf of my team, sincere apologies. I think we get carried away. I mean, we feel so strongly about this, that sometimes we get carried away.
But
And
Can I
Yes.
say
Yeah.
something,
Yes. Yes. Please.
Mr. Dikshit? What I can make out from the
Yes.
chat room and from the Q&A box, students are already so
Yes.
excited to take
Yes.
this challenge up.
Yes.
So then they are not interested in asking us questions about the PBL, but they are having an insight on their way forward. That's what I can make
That's
out from the
yes.
chat room.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
very interesting side.
Yeah.
And yes, the way we have configured the team, no, the way we have mixed in the teams, like you have a team having a student from all the 6 schools. So actual collaboration, communication would
Yes,
come up, and that will
absolutely,
lead to
absolutely.
your other 2 C's: creativity and critical thinking.
Yeah, true,
I
true.
think Naveen, you need to answer this question by Ma'am Manisha Mulchandani. What is the platform? I think they can
They can
adopt any.
decide
Yeah,
mutually.
decide.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Do we need to keep records of all of work and
Yes,
media?
we have to keep
Yeah.
records
Yes,
of all,
yes.
Yeah.
whatever we do. Actually, that is how we
Because
can analyze
absolutely. Yes.
all the
And
all
that is,
the.
yes. And Ma'am
Excellent.
Manisha, yeah, that is what will eventually kind of culminate into the final product
Yes.
that it'll have a reflection on the final product. So quite obviously, you have to keep a record, a meticulous
Yes.
record of everything that you do. Yes.
Yes. So Sanjay, with this, I thank you all for
Thank you.
taking up this webinar, and I would request uh, Director Sir, Kulkarni Sir, to kindly share his closing remark and add to what the team has just shared. Sir, please, over to you, sir.
Uh, Good evening to everyone. I think this is the beginning of an exciting journey over the next month or so. So I hope all the students have made notes. We'll do some more research. But more importantly, please reach out to your mentor teachers. And I'll have a point for the mentor teachers. Please allow the students to ask questions. Don't spoon feed them. Uh, you just nudge them along the way and don't spoon feed them. It's not a competition between mentor teachers. It's a collaborative effort between each team, and each and every team can come up with a fantastic project at the end of it. But in PBL, it's the journey which is the crucial part. The learning is in the journey. The product is only something that you verify its efficacy at the end. That's all. Otherwise, it's the process which is very important. And one very important thing that was said along the way was that you may hit a dead end. And that's the beauty of PBL. You hit a dead end, and then you find a bypass around it, and you look for the next fork in the road. So that is the beauty of PBL. That if a product was to succeed every time, then there's something wrong with in the real world. It doesn't happen that way. And secondly, this is not only teamwork; it's individual work plus teamwork. So when the teachers carry out an assessment of your performance students, both will be seen, your individual contribution and your collective output. And this will be a progressive thing as you go along. It is not something that at the end, it's not like a half yearly or an annual exam. It is during the process, your mentor teacher is expected to monitor the whole thing and keep seeing how you are moving along. But I'm repeating this. Please, mentor teachers, resist the temptation to guide your students. You'll be surprised if you let them loose, they'll come up with really great things. Your job is only to see that are they following the laid down norms of a PBL process. That's all. I think we've already uh, taken up time. And one of the golden rules of PBL is that it is a PBL is always a time bound event or process. So, like we had time overruns today, whatever timelines Mr. Dikshit has given, those timelines we will not overrun. I can see Sanjay Khati grinning from year to year or from headphone to headphone, I would say. And but I can understand his involvement and passion. So I'll leave it there. For the extra time that he took, uh, I'll conclude faster than I would have normally done. So thank you very much. Thank
Thank you,
you.
sir.
Back to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sanjay, and your team, Yash, Ma'am Nisha, Ma'am Anjali.
Thank you,
So,
sir.
as sir has just mentioned, the journey actually begins now from here. So, I would request all the teams to meet frequently. I know you must be having half release, you must be having assessments, but this is more important. So, the journey what we begin today, we expect that you have a very enriching experience through this journey. So we meet again, and for all queries, I'll be sharing the contact detail as I had shared with you earlier. And tentatively, 14th December is what we look at with the timeline what I have shared with you, and 16th we'll meet again on the same platform. With this, I close the meeting. Thank you to all. Thank you to all the participants and all the panelists. Thank you very much.